All right, so now we've got our shiny, shiny donut that's very reflective. It has, if you ever see those mirror cakes, which are really awesome, one day I want to get one of those. I'm not even a big sweet eater, but those just look so cool. And I want to tone this down, okay? So this is two things that's affecting this. It's specularity and reflectivity. Reflectivity is the amount of reflection you see, and specularity is the amount of shine, and they kind of work together. But inside of here, I can go in and say, oh, let's say reflectivity. And we're going to make a reflection mask. Now on that mask, this is pretty high. So I'm just going to flood that with black to take it away. Now you see it's totally gone. And then when I go back in and choose like a white or a light gray, and I'm in my paintbrush, so wherever I paint it in, you'll see I paint in the shine, or the reflectivity. So I can do this really, really subtly. The darker it is, the less you're going to see. See? And then on top of that, I can use a stamp to break that up a little bit. So if I go to the stamps, and it's black everywhere, but I use something like some sort of like a cloudy texture like this from my stamps, or maybe even this one, then I can just maybe drop that down to like 50%. I can add just a little bit and on this one let's do stamp spacing, kind of pop that around. And what I'm doing is I'm just giving it just a little bit of overall, just a little bit of shine in some areas. And since it's here, it's not going to be like overpowering. So you can actually see that that's giving just a little bit of pop to it. Now I could do the same with creating a brand new layer. Call it shine. And either a specular or a gloss. So they are a little similar, but you can add all sorts of channels, opacity, incandescence if it's supposed to be bright and kind of glowing in certain areas, gloss and specular. And specular is the shiny highlight, the gloss is the overall, like, you know. So think of specular as being more shine, like that hot spot shine, and gloss is just kind of like it's just a glossier material. It's kind of just shiny all over. It's more diffused. So if I add a gloss, and in that, let's say we make this like a pinkish, a brighter pinkish color. We crank that. I could put it on here as well, but we're basically, and it just depends also on, I like this lighting we're using, but it really will depend also on what kind of lighting you're using and what kind of material. If you do something like this gloss, let's say I didn't like its effect, right? I'm like, nah, I'm not feeling it too much. I want to do something different. Then I could just delete that selected and then bring in a new one. Specular. And this is the specular highlight. So you can see the difference. The specular highlight is way, way, way hotter. So if you're going to do that, then you really got to kind of, there we go. You can give it a little bit of breakup this way. So I'm using this kind of cloudy texture. But you want to use it sparingly, because if you crank it up too high, things are going to get really crazy really quick. See what I mean? And then it gets too shiny in some areas. And then last but not least, if I wanted to just add a few sprinkles to this, let's change the lighting again a little bit so we could see it just like that. And I wanted to put a few sprinkles. I made an image and brought it in. And so I'm going to go to my paintbrush. I'm going to go to my stamp. And I'm going to go to that image I created, which is this one, this little guy. And I can either just, I can pick a different color. Let's go 100%. And not in the shine. Let's say over here I'd make a brand new layer. But that doesn't look that good. Add randomness. Oops, hello. That was way too big. What are you doing? Oh, jinkies. There we are. All right, fine. There we go. The brush was way too huge. There we are. So there they are. Now I'll spread these out. I was like, why is it doing that? Okay. So you have to kind of bounce between these. That's better, but now it's... So I could do something like this where you could see there's some randomness, like how much is it going to change the rotation? How much is it going to vary and spread these guys out from each other? But in this program, the only downside of doing that is that it's, number one, it's like, wow, that doesn't look that great. If I go to the, I can either sculpt it or go to the bump. And then let's say I boosted this up to a white. Then I can add them as a bump map on here. Or if I go to my sculpting tool, and this one I'll have to crank up. Whoa, a little bit too much. Yikes. 0.5. Better. Let's say we're going to do a 2. Let's say we're going to spread it out even more. You can always go higher. And we're randomizing their spacing and stuff, so that's better. So if I do this, I'm actually going in and I'm sculpting them into the model. Nice. We're getting some of those edges because it's not high enough res. Now I've already textured it, so we got to see what it's going to do. But if I were to go into my sculpting, I make a new layer and hit Shift D. If your machines are struggling, don't go past, I'd say level 6. That's, you know, and it really is more about polygons, but you see it smoothed it out and everything seems pretty intact. All right, so if I go in now, oh look, you see how much smoother that is. So I should have just did that first, but that's okay. And now I could just go in and paint those. So whether it be by hand, and choose, remember which, oops, turn off the stamp now. And we're just adjusting the brush so we can actually just paint these in. There's another way of doing this if you use the dry brush, but if you use this, the idea is the dry brush can paint on areas that are high. So if I increase the brush, it should try to paint, if it's working right, only on those areas that are raised. Oh, and that's, oops. Yeah. But you have to really play with what its scale is so that it knows, oh, this is raised, this isn't. And then you can even boost up. But depending on what it is, we'll talk about the dry brush later. You can see how it's helping a bit. And here's the other thing, it's not really working super well because I have to go to the properties, preferences, paint, and make sure you turn off fast dry brush. And what you'll see now is that this guy should now do a better job of painting some of those in. You start at the high point of where they're at. Look at that. So I could just go in and say, you know what? I want this to be like a blue. And like I said, you'll notice that depending on the scale of the brush and where you start from with that point is how it's going to paint it in. And then basically you just kind of go through and do those. And add whatever details you want. But this is a good little exercise just to get you used to the software. And once again, it's like, oh, I could use this. Just kind of go in. Or I could just hand paint it in. No stamp turned on. And just manually do it. And just start to go through and paint it in as you like. And once it's all done, all we have to do is render it.